Tonight we are delighted to welcome Olivie Blake in conversation with Katee Robert. Olivie Blake is the author of multiple novels, anthologies, graphic novels, and film scripts. She has been published as the featured fiction contributor for Which Way magazine, as well as the writer for the graphic series Clara and the Devil. She is here this afternoon in honor of the revised hardcover edition of her cult favorite, The Atlas Six, which is to be followed by a sequel in October. There it is, the book itself.
Yes, yes. Here it is, my cult.
It is, bow down, everybody. It's been something of an online sensation, as I'm sure many of you know. I like to scour Goodreads to see what people are saying. Somebody called Chai on Goodreads says, "The Atlas Six is a fantasy novel that understands what the people want, and that is more dark academia stories with exquisitely self-indulgent prose, flawless vibes and aesthetics, and hot, morally fraudulent characters who are constantly and agonizingly on the verge of either killing each other or having sex with each other." Wow, beat that. Joining Olivie in conversation, we are lucky to welcome Katee Robert. Katee Robert is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of contemporary romance and romantic suspense. Her novel Neon Gods was described by Publishers Weekly as deliciously inventive, and Entertainment Weekly calls her writing unspeakably hot. Unspeakably hot. I love that.
Yes.
This evening's event will also include a Q&A. So you've already found the chat function, lots of you. Use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen if you'd like to ask a question. If someone has typed a question that you'd also like to know the answer to, you can upvote it and put it to the top of the list. Okay, let's get going, shall we? Olivie Blake and Katee Robert.
Hi. This
Hello.
is really exciting. I want to say actually first, so I just recently read Neon Gods and it is super good. I was just talking to Katee about it. I thought I was really excited because I thought going in that maybe it might have had a little bit of that like Twilight 50 Shades vibe where we were going to have like, you know, a very virginal, like, oh, what is a penis? I don't know. And instead we got a really, really fun character in Persephone. So I just wanted to say, totally loved it, really enjoyed it, highly recommend.
And I just need to fangirl over. I did not realize that you were part of like the team that did Claire and the Devil. Like I totally subscribed to that webtoon.
No
And
way!
I absolutely loved Atlas Six. Like I loved like the character study and just how twisty it all was. And I felt not very smart reading it because it's so smart, but it was just so enjoyable. Like I'm a big character reader, and like it's like you even turn me around on some of the characters, so I'm like, I don't think I like them, and I'm like, no, I love them all. So that's like, you know, hat tip.
Thank you. I wonder who you could be talking about.
You know,
unlikable characters.
They're my favorite thing though. I love like a morally gray, complicated, like, you know, if they're a little bit sociopathic, that's cool too. I'm down.
Yeah,
And it just having that twist of like, this is a terrible character, or this character is a terrible person who like everyone kind of agrees that they hate, but at the same time I'm like, wait, I think I'm starting to like enjoy you.
You want to know what they're gonna do next.
Because so the second one comes out in October, right?
Yes, October 25th.
Okay, so without spoilers, like okay, actually, you know, I do have a question. which do you have a favorite of the six?
I don't have a favorite. No, I purposely try not to have a favorite. I always say that when an author has a favorite character, you can tell like the chemistry on the page changes, and you're just like, you can tell the author is just so amped, like, yes, it's time for my fave. And or you know, the character they like to punish the most, same thing. And so I tried actively not to have a favorite. I think they're all fun. It's kind of like who do I feel like I want to write at any given time. But yeah, no, I was gonna say that it was really, the Atlas Six was something that I was really just interested in writing at the time. If anyone is unfamiliar with my background, this book was self-published first because I didn't feel that it made a lot of sense for traditional publishing. It's so character focused. And it was really just, it was, what did I want to write, which was, I want to work with six people like at varying degrees of yeah, again, I don't want to say likability, but certainly very, very different shades of gray. Six only 6 shades of gray. And yeah, and so then for some reason the world went insane. This happened. Here we are now. I'm just going to skip over that part because I don't fully understand it. But definitely the writing the characters is the best part. Really juxtaposing them and kind of seeing things from really different points of view was like, that was what was most interesting to me at the time when I thought I was going to write a book that only I wanted to read.
Well, and that element is so like one of my favorite parts of the book, is because like you take a character like Tristan, and like depending on which point of view you're in, they all view him so, it's the same for every character on the page. They all view each other so differently. And like I'm particularly love, oh god, I'm gonna mess with Libby, like the eager one, just because like her and her academic rival, like there's so much like mutual respect, even though they like hate but not hate, like maybe sort of like whatever, and yet some of the characters are just like, oh my god, she's so annoying. And it's a delight. I love that like kind of sidestep in different lenses of the same like character, that it's just so satisfying.
Yeah, it was really fun, especially to have the characters. I mean, they're all a little bit of unreliable narrators. They all are like, I hate this thing about this character, not realizing that they're reflecting on the thing they hate most about themselves. And then for that to kind of, like, Libby's a great example, for Callum to feel one way about her, and then Parisa to feel a completely different way, even though Callum and Parisa are constantly compared to each other. That kind of chemistry was very fun to write.
Well, yeah, it's just, I don't want to say Callum's my favorite character, but because I had such a turnaround of feelings.
Nobody wants to, but lots of people think so.
I really think it's a testament to your skill that like I went from being like, this dude sucks, like he's just a jerk, whatever, like, you know, I've enjoyed reading him, but like he's not my favorite, to being at the like towards the end being like, oh, I don't know that he's my favorite, but like he's up there somehow with like some of the twists towards the ending, really like in his reaction to, and just they're all just so smart. Like I mean, obviously you're smart because you wrote them, but like was that ever like intimidating to be like, I'm writing these people who are like some of the smartest people around?
Yeah, I feel like I remember coming across an article at one point that was like how to write characters that are much smarter than you, and I think they used like Sherlock Holmes as an example or something. You know, characters that are supposed to be geniuses, and how do you, as like a normal person who exists in the world, write characters like that? And yeah, I think that ultimately I'm gonna go. So I don't sleep a lot, so I connect things sort of slowly. But what I want to say is that you can't just write smart characters, right? Like no one's coming to a book to read something that makes them feel dumb, or read something that's just like talking at them. So I think the sort of trick to writing smart characters, but not showing my own like maybe lacking areas, was to focus on, well, what are they feeling? So really the psychological and emotional drive of the book, rather than the actual proving how smart we are on the page. I mean, I had to do some of that because it is always very difficult when someone is just telling you that a character is a genius and you never see their genius in action, especially because basically all narratives are designed to put the characters through the ringer, right? So lots of times you hear, oh, this character is so smart, and they do nothing but just like dumb things throughout the book. So didn't want to do that. So definitely there are lots of academic conversations, and I did want to lean into the academia part of it. When I wrote this, I mean, dark academia has been a thing since The Secret History, so since like the 90s, but it wasn't a thing the way that it is now. It wasn't as consumable as it is now, but that's certainly what was in the back of my head. Like, let's put all of these essentially doctoral students together. They're all experts in their fields, and what would they talk about? And I think I went to, I have a master's and I dropped out of law school. So I am familiar with being in a room with a bunch of smart people just talking about something that sounds like nonsense to other people. So in that sense, that was doable.
Well, it's the fact that they spend so much of the book like stuck together, like because they can't go out and do things. They're also in competition with each other. And like, I think that you pulled that off really well. Like that, it felt very genuine of like, they're also, it's like that competitive smart, like, and I think that made it really approachable because it's like, okay, it's not just them being like, here, let me monologue about my intelligence. It's more
Right.
like
Yeah.
almost like one-upping each other.
It's the way that they feed off of each other, is the way that you can feel where the academia is happening. But I mean, that's something that I remember from my time in academia. And actually, I loved school. But part of loving school was loving that competition and constantly fighting to set the curve and fighting to be the person who was like, looked at as like the smartest in the class. And so I think that was familiar. And just with everything, you have to come into it with what are the stakes. And in academia, the stakes are I have to be better than everybody else. I have to be, because there's an element of people are going to get cut. There's only a certain amount of positions when we get out of here. Not everybody is set up to succeed. And so that, I took that maybe a touch further than it is normally, but that was living in the back of my head while I was writing it.
So how, as far as like, because the magic felt very like almost married with science in a lot of ways, how did you go about that process of building that element of the world?
So one thing I knew that was important was I wanted the magic system to have an element of sweat. So some element of the reader being able to understand, what does it actually feel like to perform magic, or how can you tell that it's very difficult to do certain things versus not difficult to do other things. So I wanted to do characters who had specialties as opposed to sort of a generalized like spell type magic, because I just wanted it to feel a little bit more natural, something, their magical talents are built into their like character profiles, essentially, like their strengths as a human are also, or weaknesses as a human are their magical talents. And as far as the actual science, my husband is a physics teacher, and a lot of people always, I'm sure people ask you all the time too, like, where do you get inspiration? And yeah, and like, which is like a super hard question to answer. Inspiration comes from everywhere, but also there's this man that I live with all the time, and he's constantly talking to me about things. And eventually I'm going to pick up one of the books he recommends. And so yeah, he doesn't like theoretical physics as much as I do. He likes, particle physics. He's into the actual mechanics of science, whereas I was like, wow, theoretical physics is so much more interesting than I thought. There's a lot of really incredible authors and physicists, like Carlo Rovelli is a big one, who do a really good job of making it philosophical and sort of tied in with naturalism. And so it's more approachable to someone like me who's like, I'm here for art. Like, give me some art, give me some magic. And maybe don't explain everything that Einstein was trying to tell me, because I don't have the time or brain space for that. But I do want to be able to imagine, what are these concepts? How might this work? How might the universe be built? So I went into this being like, okay, so these are going to be the 6 most talented magicians of their generation, if not more. They have access to all the lost information, the lost knowledge in the world from all of history. And I asked my husband, you have all that? What would you do first? And he's like, space. So, so that was where we started. And yeah.
So building on that, how did you, because like the way that the characters were picked and their specialties plays, obviously a very important role in the book. Like, how did you go about like essentially building that team of like, this is what their specialties will be? Because obviously it's like a very important part of the series.
Mm-hmm. So the first time that I wrote this book, there was an early version of the books that you can hardly even call a version of this book, because it was so different. It was a portal fantasy. It was university age. There was a big bad, very archetypal characters. And there were 4 main characters, and I shifted one to the background and then a couple of other background characters forward when I was reconfiguring for this book, because I wanted higher stakes, I wanted gray morality, I wanted something that's more interesting than like, let's just beat one guy.
Yeah.
That just didn't feel like I had enough to say about that. And actually, when I was editing that version of the book, I was just so bored that I was like, nope, this ain't it. And eventually came up with the idea for the Alice 6. So in that sense, there were a few different stages. The first time I was just like, these are some specialties that seem like I can describe them. You know, the physicist, that makes sense. You're coming into a book like this, you're waiting for people who use elemental physics types magic. You know, you're gonna come across a telepath, stuff like that. That seemed obvious. And then in terms of fitting them together, it was like looking at, okay, what's missing? So when they're all here in this room, is there anything that would make this more interesting? Or in for me, it was what would make this funnier, and that was Raina and her plants. Yeah, like I basically, everything I write is based on like a joke, essentially, like one thing that makes me laugh. The one thing was like, what if there was this girl and she could hear plants, and all they did was just like babble at her all day, and it was terribly annoying. And there we go. And I was like, got it, genius, bestseller.
And she's so reluctant, like, I mean, and fair, because like you said, like all they do is babble at her and like essentially make bids for her attention. Like I can't imagine that'd be a very restful experience.
Yeah, I wanted the magic to feel like a burden. Like I wanted it to feel powerful, to have all these characters be capable of so much, but each of them is heavily burdened by what they actually have to experience. And so that's also another way of offsetting the intelligence factor. That's just like, if they hate it, then they don't want to dwell on it.
That's because I feel like, yeah, because like I mean, I think the people that are the two that probably embrace but yeah, no, you're right, they all just are burdened by it. That's delightful.
I was like, how could I just annoy 6 people?
Well, and it just like Callum and Tristan's relationship was very interesting to me, because it was almost like symbiotic, that's probably not the right word, on Tristan's side a little bit, just
yeah, I think so.
For like somebody who can see like through illusions and stuff, like he is probably the least sure of himself out of all of them, and it's a fascinating like conflict there, it feels like.
Yeah, I think each of them has a very personal irony, and that's Tristan's, and Callum's is, I love this. I was doing I did a Zoom with a book club at, I think, the University of New Hampshire, and one of the questions was like, if Callum is an empath, why doesn't he care about people? I just loved that question, because, you know, it's, you just because you know the emotions of other people doesn't mean that means something to you. And if anything, it's again, it's a burden. It's Raina with the plants. It's, you're constantly being oppressed by other people's feelings that you didn't ask for. And, you know, in a way, it's like an allegory for unasked for emotional labor. He's just carrying around all this stuff that he doesn't want. Not that excuses everything that Callum is or does, but yeah.
But it makes sense though. Like it makes sense if you were constantly bombarded with other people's like emotions and like that, like just onslaught. Like it makes sense that you just like find a way just to almost self-preservation to turn off your emotions, which, you know, an empath with no emotions and no moral code is a terrifying thing, but it's like, it's a very like understandable thing though.
Yeah, no, he makes a lot of sense to me. I actually, there was a like, which character are you quiz that was released today. I think it was part of the UK's like promotional thing, and I got Callum. I always get Callum. And I swear, like, it's not that any of them is the most me, but I feel like his answers always appeal to me, because I get it. I get it. I do care about people though. Just want to note that.
I mean, I definitely care entirely too much, but if I felt it on the level he does, I might find a way to carve that part of myself out, just because that sounds like awful. That sounds worse than the plants.
Yeah, so this is part of the, every person has their own little curse that they're carrying around that also happens to be their gift.
Do you have a favorite, I know this is a terrible question, but do you have a favorite scene in the book, like
I have,
or one that was most fun to write, if not a favorite?
There are two scenes that I like to talk about. One, because it's sort of a fan favorite scene, but it didn't exist, which is so the scene where Nico is repairing the house's wards. A lot of people really love that scene, but it didn't exist until my husband read the manuscript, and he was like, this is really good. He actually said early on, he was like, this is different. There's something about this book that's got like a more, compulsively readable quality to it. But we haven't done any magic in a while. And this from a man who doesn't even like fantasy. He was like, we just haven't seen any magic. Like, if I had any notes, then you should put something there. And so it was the Nico scene. And I think it's my editor's favorite scene. So yeah, there's that one. And then I often talk about the little Callum Parisa showdown.
That one's good. I honestly, like, that one made me gasp towards the end, because like I thought I knew what was happening and I didn't know what was happening, and I was like, I'm not smart enough, but this is amazing. Like, and that's like a compliment to you as the writer, because like I feel like sometimes with these very intelligent, like intense academias, like it's, if you're not so invested in the characters, it's very easy to go to the point where the reader's like, I feel stupid. So this one worked like edge. I will say, I think my favorite between that one and is also Tristan and Libby, like when they're working together and realize, like in that fight scene was just, I mean, you built these characters in, like in that Goodreads review, that the ships are endless. Like they are truly, and even when I'm like, no, I think this is my favorite, I'm like, no, this is my favorite. And I could not choose, but that one is like, it seems so ill-fated, but it is like a really sweet kind of thing that, like, I don't think they're particularly good for each other, but it is really
and that's such a pivotal moment too. That's, Tristan is one of the only characters in the book who is actually capable of changing his mind. So it's sort of interesting to watch him in that scene and to see like this one character that everyone immediately was like, oh no, we don't want to deal with that, and then have him essentially owe his life to her. If anyone doesn't know, the book has been optioned for TV. So Amazon Studios and Bright Star is producing. And when I was going through this process, I talked to a lot of different producers who had a lot of they came into it with different visions of like, who do we want to focus on, or which parts of it, the different textures of how do we want to convey what's happening in the book. And I felt like the producers who understood that Tristan and Libby scene and the element of sensuality over sexuality was like, that was very important to me. And I also went in being like, okay, so I want you to understand that when we're watching this show, every character should feel like they could kiss or kill any of the others at any given time. That is extremely important to me.
Well, that's so accurate though, because it's like it's like from scene to scene where you're like, no, I think that they're great together, and then the next scene happens, you're like, wait, no, I'm so confused. Are they? And that's so like delightful. Like I'm recently have gotten into fan fiction, and like just the like I'm like, I ship everyone all the time. So it's just like, it's fun to see, and as an author, just to see those components, because I have no idea what your end game is, and that's fun for me, because when you read as much as we do, you kind of get a feel for the patterns of a story or a character arc or whatever. And this story that you're building, like over the series, is it a trilogy?
It's a trilogy, yeah.
Okay, over the trilogy is like I don't know where you're going to end up, and that delights me.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. There are lots of people who say, they read the first chapter and they're like, oh, I know where this is going, and then by the end of the book they're like, I'm not sure, you didn't go where I thought you were going to go, which is good. That's what I want. And I don't know if I ever actually gave my non-spoilery answer about book 2, but now is a good time to say that there are new like contrasts in book two. There are characters who have a lot of scenes together who didn't have any scenes together essentially in book one. So things have like, you know, something, an ingredient got got removed from the recipe, and so now alliances have shifted, and so there are a lot of scenes where it's again, are we gonna kiss or are we gonna murder each other right now, in new ways than before. So yeah, very fun for me.
And I think that was so ingenious to remove the particular ingredient that you did, because it is such a like polarizing situation now, and like, and again, like I just was like gasp, like I love that. My experience as a reader of reading that book was just delightful, because it's like I don't know what's going to happen. I am really excited to see like where we go from here, and the way you just sort of threw curveball after curveball after curveball in the last act was just I was like, nope, did not go at all where I thought that was going. That's amazing. Like between the characters and the greater like situation, and just I think, I mean, obviously you have something special here. Like it's resonated in a huge way with like, you know, TikTok and readers. And I mean, now with the like re-release, however that works, is like, you know, it's going to reach a whole new, I'm so excited.
I'm so excited you're excited. This is just, yeah, I mean, all of this is just sort of beyond, it's like I said, I can't even think about how this happened. I don't understand it. But if anyone wants to talk to me about the book, then great. I love to talk about them. And just for the audience, where I am currently in the process of the books coming out, I am transmitting line edits for book two today. So book two is written, and I'm going to try not to spoil anything, which is going to be very hard for me. And I also have a surprisingly thorough outline, because I don't usually write with outlines, for book three. So I actually know where things are going. I did not know though until I finished book two. So
so you normally like intuitively write your way through a draft?
Not fully. I'm what they call a reformed pantser. So I used to fly by the seat of my pants, and then I started, you know, you make the same mistakes over and over. It's like you get the soggy middle problem too many times, and then you're like, okay, I gotta do something to fix this. So I started, I basically write the first act without anything, and then from there I start to outline and to like flesh out the outline as I go. So it's just like, okay, well, what's happening next? What hasn't happened in a while? Let's keep track of where we are in the narrative so that I don't just like go off.
Right. Yeah, the rabbit holes.
Yeah, my first book, Masters of Death, has a bunch of interludes in the middle, and some people really don't like that because it's just like literally how I talk. I'm just going off on tangents. But you know what? It's fine. It was the book I wanted to write at the time. So.
Well, and I also think like in our careers as authors, like each book teaches you something, and it's important to have those early books that might not necessarily be what you would write now if you told that story again, but it taught you something that got you to the point where you are now in your craft and in your storytelling.
I wrote that book out of order. It was the dumbest thing I've ever done. and then I had to try to like piece it back together, and I do not recommend it.
I write linear, like beginning to end. I mean there's some brackets in there of like, go back and fix this, make this clever, but like the out of order authors fascinate me, because I was like, how do you, but I also have a goldfish memory, so like if it's out of order, I'm like, it didn't happen, I don't know what. So the fact that you could do that is amazing.
I do. People often ask me like, how do you write a book? And it's different for me every time. Every book I've written has been very just a totally different process. The Atlas 6 was definitely the most organized. My initial outline was just this was my initial outline, the table of contents. And then I just kind of fleshed it out as I got to each section. And this book took 8 weeks. The sequel took 4 weeks because I did not have any longer than that. And that process was insane because I had to keep, like, I would write for 2 hours, stop to feed the baby, stop to take matings, go back to writing. And because it had to get done, I, for the first time, wasn't able to look over what I'd written before. I just had to continue on. And in some ways that was great. It was just like, okay, we're just moving forward. It feels very linear because we're just picking up right where we left off. But at the same time, I used the same phrases so many times. It'd be like scenes written in the same day. Just like, well, this thing has crossed my mind and I'm going to use it.
That's what edits are for, though. That, like, oh, this is my favorite phrase in this book. I've said it 27 times. We can take out 26 of them.
Having to decide which ones to take out was so sad for me. But yeah,
if somebody ever figures it out, they should let me know, because I usually leave in too many, and then my editor's like, "You've said this 6 times," and I'm like, okay.
But yeah, to any writers, aspiring writers, learn to love revision, because the book is not in the first draft. The book is in the revisions. So yeah.
Which actually we'll start with the Q&As, because we have a question about what advice would you give to new writers?
Oh, okay. Well, definitely that's really important. There's a lot of stress and anxiety. A lot of what people call writer's block is, I think, just anxiety about feeling the need to do something perfectly or to do it really well. When in fact, writing badly just so you have something to work with is critical. Just write your first draft. And the truth is, it won't be good. Like, no matter how skilled you are, it's not going to be good. I don't want people to read. I don't know how many manuscripts I've written at this point. I don't want people to read my first drafts. Those are for me. They're gross. And but when you work through it in revision, when you continue to live in the world of this book for a while, that's when you're going to actually get the practice on how to finish a book. That's really important. How to know when something feels right, when, like, the emotional beats are in the right place. You get that from practice. And then for writers, that's my advice for writers. My advice for people who want to be novelists, like people who want to have a career in writing, that's different. It's similar advice, which is, in order to think of your career, you can't think of every book as the book of your heart. Sometimes you have to know that a book isn't right for the market, and you have to put it aside and think that, that its time will come. If anything, the Atlas 6 is great evidence that if something is good, its time will come, because it was out for over a year before it went viral. So my advice there is be adaptable, keep going, but keep going. Don't give up.
All right, next question. What do you hope your readers take away from reading your books?
Psychopathy. Just kidding. I write for the reader who is willing to let themselves be surprised. I write for the reader who goes in ready for their mind to change or expand. And I think that fiction at its best teaches us something about different experiences, or shapes the way that we view the world around us, or how we understand our place in the world. And so I guess, with a book like this, I hope it makes you think, not necessarily about the book or the plot, but just that something in it, like, makes your brain buzz. That's the best feeling, when you read a book and you're just like, I just can't stop thinking about this. Like, to me, that's the height of compliments. It's just like this, this line or this scene or just this thing, it sparked something in me and now I can't let it go. That's ideal.
All right. Which character's type of magic would you want to have personally?
Telepathy. I'm very, very nosy. I don't want to know what people think about me. If I could unsubscribe from people's thoughts about me, that would be important. But I'd love to know their thoughts about other things and other people. And I would use my powers so badly, so irresponsibly. Yeah.
Just, it's okay to be a little nosy. You just want to, like, tap in occasionally. um so many exciting things happening. What have you been reading in your very limited self-care time?
Actually, I have been able to read my son doesn't nap unless I'm holding him, so that's a lot of that's a lot of reading time. Um, but let's see. Okay, so I read Neon Gods quite recently. It was very good. I'm talking to at the Tucson Book Festival. I'm speaking with Charlie Jane Anders and Shauna McGuire. So I've been reading their recent books. They're great. Also, White Trash Warlock by David R. Slayton and The Paths Between Stars by Amira Makanzi. What else have I recently read? This is the sort of question I can only answer with Goodreads open in front of me. I've been revisiting like a lot of, during the pandemic, I had a really hard time conjuring the bandwidth for complex fantasy. So I really fell behind on like science fiction and fantasy. I read a lot more romance, literary. Why can I never think, this is so annoying. What did I
It's
know
always that question because you're like, I know I read books.
I know.
And they were good books.
And I apparently, oh no, my phone is here. Oh my God, I'm the worst. Okay, no, I'm gonna look it up. Let's see. What have I recently read? This is fine. I'm opening my Libby app. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm so excited about the books that are in here. Oh, I can't wait to read The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I love Lucy Foley. I always read it so quickly. Lucy Foley and Leanne Moriarty. If I pick up those books, I can't do anything else. I have to finish them. And Leanne Moriarty is another one. She's a great example of people who use that multi-POV way to tell a story. I love the way that she writes thrillers because it's you almost can't identify where the thrill is. You just know like each person is giving you a little bit more information, and it's not like a whodunit where it's like, well, what's going to happen? It's how did we get to this point? All of Us Villains. I just finished All of Us Villains. Loved it. Oh, and I finished My Body by Emily Ratajkowski, which was great. If you have any doubts about her as like a thinker, the introduction will put them to rest. So yeah.
Okay. If you had to describe the Atlas paradox in 3 words, what do you think they would be? No pressure. You could literally say anything and we'd be excited.
Yeah, shifting alliances is really the thing. I'm trying to, oh God, I want to tell so much. I just texted my editor earlier today. I was like, can we release the book now? Can we just I really need to talk about it. And it's driving me crazy that I can't. But yeah, I mean, I think that if you like the Atlas 6, you're going to get more of what you like in the Atlas paradox. That's the only way I could think to put it.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere in the US selling the beautiful sprayed edge edition?
Oh, no, that's a Waterstones exclusive. So that is the UK.
I mean, you can buy it in the US because I just did that with the Final Strife because they're doing the same thing with the painted sprayed edges. And I was like, you know what? I'll pay shipping. It's fine.
The British are very good about pretty books. They are like, you know what? Here's your cover, but we've added glitter. And it's like, why didn't anyone else think to do that? Duh.
That's definitely the answer all along. What are some of your favorite books? So not necessarily recent, but like tops.
Yeah, okay. That's a slightly easier question. The Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante are my favorite books. Also, White Teeth by Zadie Smith. Love that. What is the name of her she has like her own little subgenre that's like hysterical irony or something, which I thought was so funny. And I was like, that's what I'm going for, I think. But yeah, I really like family dramas. I think that there are a lot of people who come into the Atlas 6 being like, where's the plot? And I know where the plot is. No one has to reassure me. I know. But I understand that sometimes with fantasy and science fiction, action is what people mean when they say plot.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, the plot, it's like it kind of lives in between the characters. It lives almost in the space between chapters where you're processing what just happened and what's going to happen next. And those kinds of books are the most appealing to me. So yeah, family dramas, more quiet things. The Secret History was like definitely a big influence on this book. I think that when people ask me like what books influenced the Atlas Six, they think I'm gonna name an SFF title, which like I love fantasy and science fiction. That's where my heart is. But The Secret History, also If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha is a great one. The same concept of like the contrasting points of view are what tells the story. Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff does sort of the same thing. And something else popped into my head and then just immediately jumped out of it. Girl, Woman, Other is another great one that uses the different points of view, and the story again is like in the way that the narratives fit together. Fault Lines by Emily Atami is a book that I read last year that I just absolutely fell in love with. It was so good. Certainly as a new mother, that one meant a lot to me.
Awesome. All right. I feel very old. How was meeting some of your readers for the first time ? The other day?
Oh yeah, I got to meet some readers at the Grove on Tuesday night, which was so exciting. And I think I spent way too long just like chattering at them.
I'm sure they loved it. They're like, that's
I hope so. But yeah, it was so fun and so weird to walk in and see people who had read the book, or just even to be holding the book. It's so I can't explain how strange this is, because I really thought, I knew that I wanted to be a novelist. I knew like I'm not going to quit. It's going to happen someday. I did not ever think it was going to happen this way. This is the most insane way for something like this to happen, I would think. And I was really prepared for a long slog. Like, I don't know, this is dumb, but Taylor Swift, she posted like a long time ago a picture of one of her first gigs or something. She was on this like little stage with like a handful of people standing. It was like a county fair or something. That's the kind of career I thought I was going to have. I was going to like, county fair it. And so this is such a strange to have people already there and having already read the book. It's wild.
Well, it's especially, I'm sure, extra surreal that it happened in the middle of this pandemic where it's like super isolating in general. And so to like, it feels almost disconnected from like reality, because you're like, oh, I put out this book and like I guess people like it, cool, and now it's like you have fans. It's a whole thing. Like it's super exciting, but it's got to be a little bit like strange to like it happened very quickly and also in this very unprecedented times, as we keep saying.
But I don't think it could have happened without the unprecedented time, because I don't think that book talk would be what it is without the pandemic. And I was actually, I forget who I was talking. I just talk whatever. There have been a few self-published books that have gotten really big, and it's always happened at the rise of a social media. So like 50 Shades of Grey was kind of right when Twitter was becoming a big thing, or like The Martian was right when people were starting to release books on the internet. And so something like this was bound to happen with TikTok. It's a new social media. It's a new way for people to interact. It's a great collaborative community because it's so digestible and it's compulsive. It's the gamification of culture to scroll and get things recommended for you. It's fascinating to watch. So this, like, it was going to happen to a book. That it happened to my book is like, no, that's silly.
It was your husband, he had it right. He said it's compulsively readable, and that is what people are craving, is that escapism of a book that's going to grab their attention and hold it and like take them elsewhere for a period of time. And I think that's like invaluable, and you can see that with like how your books resonated with like so many people. It's like really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly. I think that it makes sense that dark academia has become, more of a thing. Sorry, I didn't realize the light on my monitor was changing. Because we want to be somewhere else, and where do we want to be is like in a dark library wearing an oversized cardigan and smelling wood smoke. By the way, the UK has scented proofs, and they told me, like, I saw a few times, like, oh, we have scented proof, get a one-of-a-kind scented proof. And I was like, what is the smell? Like, what? You have to tell people what the smell is, but the smell is wood smoke, and that is cool.
That's clever. I've never even heard of that before. That's so cool.
I thought it was going to be like, scented, like, what, it's going to smell like a library book when you open it, like,
right.
as someone bottled the smell of library books. But yeah, wood smoke.
Huh. That's amazing. All right. What are some books or stories that might have inspired you to become an author?
So the first book that I ever wrote when I was in middle school for my local library was essentially a knockoff of Tamara Pierce.
Same.
It's like it was deeply derivative, but I was 12, so it's fine, I think. So yeah, I guess that's where I would start. I think Lev Grossman has a quote that was just like, I knew I was a writer, but I didn't really know it until I started writing fantasy. I think that was it for me, that there was always a compulsion to write fiction, and it just didn't click until I started writing fantasy, which isn't the only thing I write, but that was what really kind of lit the fire of like, you know what, I'm not great at a lot of things, but this I might be good at.
All right, I think we have time for like one more question. So, okay. Do you know the end games of Atlas 6, like couples wise? You know spoilers obviously, but like, do you know, well, I guess which ships are going to actually sail?
I would like to first qualify that I would not define this series as a romantic fantasy. So I would keep in mind that we're not talking about everybody pairing off. This is not an HEA situation. I would not expect, yeah,
you're not going to have three couples riding off into the sunset at the end of this.
The point of this story is not entirely the romances. There are some romances that define what happens in the plot. I think I am a romantic at heart, and when we're talking about people and what drives people, and ultimately the stakes of these books are the people in their lives. So yes, romance is a really important aspect in that sense. But I wouldn't go into this expecting, at the end we're going to see a wedding and babies. But yes, I do know what's happening to all of the characters now.
Awesome. I'm so excited.
Yeah, there's a note on my phone that it's just like, sometimes I just open it and I'm like, haha, it's here. So it's here. So if something terrible happens to me, we're fine. It's on my phone.
When is book 3 supposed to?
It's July, I believe, 2023. It's definitely in the summer.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so not like, it's not too long a wait. Like it's every like 6 months ish. That's perfect.
I will be writing it now. Essentially, as soon as book 2 transmits, I'm going to start writing book 3. It's, I think, better for me that way, so I can work with continuity. I already know which voice is opening the book, and I am so excited.
Can you tell us that, or is that a spoiler?
I think that if you think very hard about the series and who we haven't heard from, who's maybe quite relevant, you might have a guess.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I think, okay, so like we still have some questions, but like we're kind of running out of time, so I don't know.
Can we look at them?
Yes. So I guess, yeah, if you want to, like, there's like 4 if you want to.
Yes. Okay, do I ever get inspired by song lyrics? Yeah, definitely. I have like daydream playlists. I'm amazing and an inspiration. Thank you. 3 a.m. Go to bed, honey. Favorite tropes to write or read? I mean, I do love enemies to lovers. I mean, that's always, I love second chance at love too. I feel like that's something I've really grown into as I've gotten older. Yes, you'll understand. there will be moments where you're like, is that what happened? And it's because a scene has been changed. There are 2 scenes that have been changed.
Were
So,
they like dramatically changed?
in terms of how the magic was, in terms of the mechanisms of the magic, which is kind of important, you know, the magic ultimately is very important to the books. So there, you will be confused. I think that you will get past it. I think that it will confuse you for like a little bit, and you'll just be like, okay, and move on. Hopefully I'm not wrong about that. I'm sure Goodreads will tell me if I'm wrong about that. But yeah, so, you know, if you can read the new version, there are 2 scenes that have been essentially completely redone.
Going to mark these as done. Cool. Awesome. This was fun. I feel like I learned a lot.
This was so fun. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah. Thank you for just like the whole thing. And thank you to Powell's. I think they might be coming back.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you both. That was great. That was a great chat. So many books mentioned, the recommendations just flying around.
I hope you carry all of them.
I
hope you sell out of them. I should add all of Carlo Rovelli's books. They're just so good. If you have even the slightest interest in physics, those are great.
Yes. What a guy. Thank you for joining us. You can buy this book. We'd love it if you bought it from pals.com. While you're there, you should pick up a Katee Robert book for $3. And you can also see all of our upcoming events there, pals.com for all of that. But we're done. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Olivie, and thank you, Katee. Any final words? Putting you on the spot.
Any final words?
Words before we say goodbye forever.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I hope that I hope your brain goes buzz.
Perfect. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.